it's all based on some kind of experience I'm having, whether that's constructing a track and like I'm listening to what I'm doing and reacting to that, or whether I'm writing a lyric and I'm looking back on my recent life and reacting to the experience that I had, you know, whether it was good or bad, or you know, put me in a precarious position, or set me up for success somehow. Like whatever it was, like I'm just kind of looking back and mining those little details, and that's that's been one of the greatest things about kind of being more of a sober person. I can really remember that stuff now in a way that I didn't used to be able to, so the time it takes me to do it is less, which is great.
Well, you could see why he died so fast. Just think about the thing you would change about your past. Don't worry, we've got booze and pills for pain. Move out to East Nashville and write a song about a train. Well, you can't turn away from your own 2 feet or give away what's not yours to keep. I cry to you when I feel wrong. I need it like a teenager needs a song.
Aaron Lee Tasjan, I'm so excited to talk to you, man, or keep talking to you, I guess we should say. Thanks for making the time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And coming by, and congrats on all the, the recent successes, past successes, and from the outside, just kind of constant evolution. I feel like you are rare or exceptional is a better way to put it, among artists that I follow. It's just always kind of changing and never getting caught in a rut. At least the intention seems to be there. Is that fair to say?
Sure. I hope so. I try to do it until it feels like that. You know, like a stopping point for me, or the beginning, I guess I should say, of a stopping point usually comes when it feels a little scary and unmoored. Mm-hmm. I'm a little unsure of what it is that I've made or am making. That being in that place tends to result in something that eventually I become less afraid of and learn to appreciate for being just something, a different side of me that I didn't really maybe know about or expect.
Wow, this is going deep quick. I love it. To that point, I wonder, let me think about this. I was reading an interview of yours. It was maybe on the recording of Tasjan, that you try to have a certain amount of intentionality when you go about recording your songs, but at the same time, you want to leave room for the record to reveal itself. I'm paraphrasing this. I don't know if A, did I accurately quote you?
Yeah.
And B, maybe you could put some words to that kind of liminal space between intentionality and letting loose the reins.
Totally. Because I think it's great to go in. I think it's great to go in with an intention. As long as you don't hold on to that intention at the expense of whatever it is that you're working on is becoming. You know, for me, I am a very naturally curious person, so that's a great way to work, because I'm always kind of like stepping back and looking at it and going like, what exactly are we doing here? And what's great about that process for me is it's always informative in terms of choosing what goes on next, or even more so, oftentimes muting something or taking something off of a track to make it really be the most realized version of itself that it can be.
Is there an example that comes to mind from a specific song or experience in the record?
Yes, actually. Up All Night, when we were off the Tasjan record, when we were recording that song, we were really doing that very sort of warm 70s singer-songwriter. Everything was just sounded very analog and very natural and warm. And the label just wasn't hearing the song. They weren't sure if that song belonged on the record, and I was thinking like, man, this is like probably the single, but like, how do I get this song in a, recorded, mixed, whatever, in a way that makes that apparent? And so we had things happening with it. Like there was acoustic piano on it originally because, we did have the synth sound that you ultimately hear on the record as well. But it's like in the sort of way that it was being mixed at that time, that warmer 70s, more analog sound, there was something about it that just it didn't have the edge that it ultimately got when we sort of stripped back some of those more acoustic analog elements and pushed more of the synth and some of the weird electric guitar little part things that we had played just for fun. I had done 2 guitar solos. I had done one that was very Mike Campbell, like overdriven, but sparkly electric guitar that just kind of sounded straight, like something Butch Walker would play or somebody like that. And then we had also overdubbed a separate solo using a Mellotron guitar pedal that sounded much more like a synthesizer than a guitar. And so we, and a lot of these choices, by the way, were made by the mix engineer, John Congleton, whom I was very excited to work with, both for the records that I had heard him work on recently, and also his own music is really interesting. And he's just a consummate artist. So I was excited for him to hear these records a little bit through his ears. But like some of the things that he did were dial back all the warm tonalities that we had mixed the song with and push up those kind of more mid-range, like kind of darker frequencies. And that ended up being perfect for that song.
So you're talking about at the mix level, not even in terms of pushing up or introducing new instruments.
Yeah.
He was just the way that the track itself
He was mixing stuff, and then we had also made some choices, like in what we sent him, like where we ended up muting the piano that we had originally recorded and some other things like that to just to make it more of a weirdo sci-fi song and less of a 70s, singer-songwriter rock, whatever type.
It's crazy to hear this story because to me, it couldn't be other than how I heard it on the record. With that, it's like that overdriven synth pop sound, carrying it forward.
Totally.
And it's obnoxious. It's got swagger. It's also like the music has a sense of humor.
Yes.
As well. The music in a way, like it's not I don't want to say it's not taking itself seriously, but you know what I mean? There's a bed of irony in the music.
The other version, it's interesting that you say that because that was the other version may have just been a little too earnest for what the song wanted to be, And so it was really a combination of taking things away that we realized we had done before we really understood the song fully. And then also allowing John Congleton to mix it in a way where, like, my co-producer Gregory Latimer's response when he first heard the song mixed by Congleton, he was like, man, I mean, this is amazing, but like, did he just hate what we did? he seems to have like really gone the other
Something
way
of a departure.
with it. Yeah, you know, and we both were laughing because I think we knew he was joking, really, but like also like I knew exactly what he meant by that. You know, we had sort of been envisioning the song differently. And hadn't fully realized that we were a little bit off base with that until we heard John's mix of it, and everything made sense after that. And the label immediately was like, "Oh yeah, we understand this."
Yeah.
So
and then that song, isn't that the first song on the record?
it is
or the second
song, I think, on the
But
record.
did that then form the kind of the template of the sonic template for the rest of the tracks? Because I feel like those songs hang together in that way. There's
Definitely. Because we kind of had done most of we kind of had made our rough mixes and all of that pretty much the same all the way across the board. So we just had these really warm, very organic sounding tonalities going. And I think, what John Congleton was able to do was sort of take everything that we had done and sort of reconstruct it to kind of push it into a space that was ultimately, I think, more timeless, even though it has a period of time that you can reference, like sonically when you hear it, you go, oh, this is kind of 80s and this is kind of, but like it ultimately, by sort of being a record that was created in 2019 and 2020 and having these sort of like, more mid-range, darker, sort of harsher in a way frequencies like pushed to the forefront of the mixes, and we're living in a time where we're coming out of a pandemic and things are just very chaotic. It became a record that really made sense for that moment in time, and it was really a result of everybody that worked on it and had something to contribute to it that just made it a little bit better along the way.
a little leap from production to songwriting, just using that song as a jumping off point. But the first time I heard that song, and this is a great, it's a bit emblematic, I think, of your approach to songwriting. I invite you to comment in that sense of humor bit is evident in that line. It's gonna be up all night. It'll be all right. Or it won't be. I think first time I heard that, I just laughed out loud. And also, it just, it really resonated with me, I guess is what I want to say. It made me laugh because that's how I feel, all the time. I'm a genuinely optimistic person and a bit pessimistic. Maybe at the same time, these two things, there's a little bit of it doesn't really matter kind of running through everything I do, which is like extremely permissive in a way. I'm just
best.
I'm doing this right now because of that kind of idea. But I wonder if to what extent a line like that is, part of just a song and you move on, or is it part of your sort of approach to living and creating?
Definitely. Yeah. I think, it's when that song was the first time that Gregory and I had ever collaborated together as songwriters. And he had originally written that line as it's going to be all right or it won't be, one way or the other. And during the time where we were initially recording it, the verses that I had written for the song were totally different, had a different feel. And I was singing it that way with that additional line at the end. When I figured out that those verses needed to be, in essence, like in order for the song to work, I had overthought the verses. They needed to be more almost like a second chorus, kind of they needed more of a nursery rhyme kind of vibe to them, the way that the chorus had. And when I did that, all of those verses, those lines about, I went to the doctor. She said, you might have a problem, but I really can't tell, and I broke up with my boyfriend to go out with my girlfriend because love is like that, and all these things. It just made so much more sense to say it's going to be all right or it won't be, and leave the other part off, So it was like for me, like creating everything is informative, and it's all based on some kind of experience I'm having, whether that's constructing a track and like I'm listening to what I'm doing and reacting to that, or whether I'm writing a lyric and I'm looking back on my recent life and reacting to the experience that I had, whether it was good or bad, or put me in a precarious position, or set me up for success somehow, like whatever it was. Like I'm just kind of looking back and mining those little details, and that's that's been one of the greatest things about kind of being more of a sober person. I can really remember that stuff now in a way that I didn't used to be able to. So the time it takes me to do it is less, which is great. But it's all just kind of reactions to whatever the experiences I'm having are, whether it's lyrically or musically.
There was another bit that I came across in my research for this interview, talking about, I think it was on that record, and that was like your most personal record to date, which I feel like every songwriter publicist says about their latest record. But,
so true.
But it invites an interesting question to me, which is this sort of tension between the personal, dare I say, like confessional approach to songwriting, which I'd put maybe like Elliott Smith in that camp, versus like, for one of a better example, like a Beatlesy pop, straightforward kind of approach to songwriting. And I feel like this town has two of those things, both of those things going at all times, depending on which side of the river you're on.
Totally.
And there's no fault to either approach. Yeah. I mean, one tends to make more money, but also one tends to say something meaningful to more people in its way. I, however, don't notice that I gravitate toward that music very much. I tend to like music that comes from a personal point of view.
Sure.
But how have you thought about those kind of two poles, or have you, and has your thought changed across time?
Yeah. I think in terms of writing, because my first two albums were very sort of observational records, even when I was singing about myself, I was singing it more from this like sort of bird's eye view. And so it sort of just had this very kind of observational tone to all of the lyrics. When I kind of started writing more directly about myself, that the Tasjan record was kind of where I really dove into that. And I knew it was going to be a challenge for a few different reasons, because, people sort of love to continue to see you as whatever they first know you as. It's a very comfortable situation when an artist creates a piece of work that the perception of them can change from an audience perspective. Sometimes that means that you lose fans, or your record, gets reviewed in a way that you sort of have a sense that maybe people don't understand it, or possibly don't even want to understand it. Then add into that, being a queer person. So you're automatic, if you're singing about love as you feel it and as you experience it, for a certain group of people, they're just going to take you off the table and go, well, that's not for me. So you could lose listeners there. Also, I was, I shouldn't have been, but I was somewhat surprised to see people sometimes taking shots at whether or not, I identify as like a bisexual person. I would see in reviews kind of people taking shots at that being like a legitimate identity, basically.
Being bi versus one or the other.
Yeah, it's not real, it's like, or somebody would I remember it was the Bandcamp record of the day or Bandcamp record of the week or whatever, when it came out. And I remember the person said, it seems like he just thinks it's really important for us to know that he's bisexual. And you would never say that about, Miley Cyrus singing a song about her boyfriend, you would never say that about, Steven Tyler singing a song about whatever, lady he was hooking up with for the evening or whatever back in 72 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's really important that we know that they're romantic. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a strange criticism that I think really just comes from a place of fear and also just the sort of relentless human nature of wanting to categorize things, but like the necessity for the categorization is not coming out of a space of like, these need to be categorized. It's like, if I categorize this, it makes me feel more comfortable about it. And like, that's not the point of art. The point of art is to make you feel or think or respond, so I suppose on some level it's like you can look at that and go, well, they did respond. The response, unfortunately, in some cases was something that felt a little reductive in terms of like how we should think about humanity or whatever. But I guess, in a way it's like this idea that somehow we're going to eventually overcome, biases and prejudices and live in a world where like none of that exists is not like reality. It's like there are, balancing energies that exist in the universe, all over the place, like good and bad. And that is a part of human nature inherently, so you're going to encounter that when you are singing about yourself more and you're putting yourself out there. That's a more vulnerable form of expression, I think, than just being that kind of Mark Twain observer, type of writer. So, I have found ways to dive into that where I think I've arrived at a place where I can allow myself to just be sort of happily misunderstood, and know that it's not about trying to create a perception of myself that I find attractive or whatever, through making albums and singing songs. It's much more about allowing the parts of myself, maybe that are even a little scary to share, to shine through and meet the moment that we're in.
That's a excellent and mature way of putting it is the word that's coming to me right now. One thing I might say too is that when you were saying that, I was thinking about the actress Meryl Streep talking about when we go to see movies, we don't go to see the actors on the screen, we go to see ourselves on the screen.
Sure.
And I think about that with songs because I noticed that this is taking aside the queer approach aspect of what you're doing. I'm not trying to reduce it or minimize it. But whenever we talk about ourselves, I notice this in my own songwriting. And sometimes if I see a songwriter who is so into their own personal story that I find myself wondering why I'm here.
You don't need me for this.
You don't need me for this. This is the therapy. And it's that part of it. It's like wanting to wrap your story in a way that's kind of still a little shiny, is still a little, that still has something for the audience to have a point of entry into their song. It's interesting because I would never have thought that. I don't identify myself as a queer person, though I've had a bit of a wild past. A lot of people don't know that when I was a bit younger. And, yet listening to your record and even that like line in that song, it just like makes me laugh. I mean, it's just like, it's fun.
Yes.
What happened to rock and roll being fun?
Yeah.
People sometimes I think get a little uptighty about the Americana designation of things, and that we have to adhere to some rules and guidelines. Or
I think gender and identity and the way that you identify and human sexuality and like all of those things like are fun, you know, like I think those are like we sometimes you know can talk about them in these ways that make them feel like these very like heavy things, and sometimes they are, you know, but I do think it's also like discovering yourself, understanding yourself, and how you relate to others in the world around you can be really fun. But it, you know, that is also, if you're in the position to be like privileged enough to not have to worry about, you know, some of the situations that certain kinds of marginalized people will find themselves in, which can be really scary and harmful, you know, and that is the duality of life, of existence, of, you know, of being a human animal, you know, on this mortal coil. You know, it's a place where you know, there is, you know, love and fascination and beautiful, unexpected moments, waiting around every corner, as there is danger and harm and potential for everything to go really, really wrong, even if you've kind of done everything right. You know, it just is the nature of existence. And just because one of these exists, you know, just because something bad could happen, you know, is no reason not to do it. There's one song that Jason Isbell has that I really love, where he says, "Be afraid, be very afraid, but do it anyway." You know, and I think that that's a great summation of an approach to life that I sort of resonate with. It's like, I'm not going to be ignorant of, you know, the myriad of possibilities that exist, for things to, you know, be really hard or challenging. But I'm also never going to allow that to stop me from, doing something that I feel like is, you know, a reason to live and get out of bed every day and share and experience a richer life. Yeah.
Heard. I mean, I identify with that song of Isbell's and that statement a lot. And if I'm going to try to say something clumsy, as best I can, or as articulate as I can, a clumsy feeling, poorly articulated. Here we go. When I was younger, having this sort of modus operandi approach to living as well, which is just like, I can't wait for tomorrow, and I will get into all kinds of trouble. And I just know that short of dying, I'm probably going to be okay. And then I was like, well, and if I do die, then don't we all die? And that created an environment of kind of that coupled with my sort of relentless curiosity, created an environment of just like constant adventure. And it was awesome. I would say from my more advanced years, looking back, I did have I had an issue with boundaries of any kind. I didn't like them. I didn't like, and I whenever I was in situations, I was just kind of like down for whatever might happen. And now that I'm older and I'm in love with my wife, I have a family, I'm a father, these things that I'm totally embrace and feel like very lucky to have. I noticed I noticed when I was kind of dealing with all of this a few years ago, like, oh, there's some now like boundaries that need to be here with regards to some of my relationships or other things I encounter in my life, even just like rituals of life or routines. Is that something that you have dealt with or thought about, or if this is, or not, or do you have a different feeling than you did when you were 22? Or?
Definitely. Yeah. Cause I think you can't, I think at a certain point, like, you have to put to bed certain things so that you can continue to enjoy others, and I think that is just the kind of wisdom that comes with being alive for a longer period of time.
Yes.
When you're young and you have everything in front of you. Things like boundaries, can seem, almost silly or, unnecessary at times.
Right. Contrary to the spirit of the
moment.
artist.
Yeah,
yes,
totally.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then life goes on. And one of the beautiful things about life goes on is that you lose things. You lose people that you didn't plan to lose. And in that very difficult situation, you learn to understand what it is that you really value and really need in your life to feel at your most loving and open and all of those things. And it's a tough row to hoe sometimes, but like the end result is always a deeper knowledge and understanding of who you are and where you're coming from, whether that's as a person or as an artist or as a father or as a partner or as a friend or as a, son or daughter. All of these things are just teaching us about ourselves. And I think when you can open yourself up to the lessons of pain, you learn, that you can get through it, which is at the beginning that feels really hard, but you learn that you can get through it. And then you learn that like part of the process of getting through it is giving you more that you need to keep going as time continues,
Shifting gears, I read this already. I know you've relayed the story, but relay it for us here on the podcast. Is the time that you got to play with the New York Dolls?
Oh, sure.
How did that happen? What was it like?
I had a band called Semi-Precious Weapons, and we were getting a lot of New York Dolls comparisons, and we had a manager who had worked in the music industry like back in the 70s and 80s. And he had even managed Johnny Thunders for a period of time and had sort of co-produced what I think is arguably his best solo album, which is called So Alone. And features, by the way, I believe the debut vocal performance of Chrissy Hine from The Pretenders.
Really?
She was there covering the record as a journalist for the NME. And I think somebody heard her humming along to one of the songs, and then it was like, man, get in there and sing on this or whatever.
Wow.
So I think that's her first record she was ever. But this manager that we had knew Tony Visconti, who produced Electric Warrior for T-Rex and Diamond Dogs for Bowie and many other things. But he got Tony to come see us play. And when Tony came to see us, that brought out, the neighborhood rock and rollers, which included Sylvain from the New York Dolls and Steve Conti, who had sort of been playing the Johnny Thunders role in that band, in the new version of that band. And I just kind of hit it off with those guys after the gig. You know, we had a lot to talk about guitar-wise, a lot of similarities. We were all playing Les Pauls and playing them through British amps really loud, and playing chords that maybe didn't belong a lot of times in some of the music that we were playing. And so we just kind of hit it. And we were all kind of dressed similarly, you know, and had some hair going on and the whole nine yards. And so we kind of hit it off. Steve and his wife had their first child on the way. And Steve really wanted to be home for the birth of their kid and be around for that. So he called me up and he said, "Hey man, you know, does your hair still look real weird? You know?" And I was, "Yeah, man." Great, because I you know, do you think you could sub these gigs, you know, with the Dolls for me? And you know, you'd have to learn, you know, whatever 40 New York Dolls songs or something, and David's not going to want to rehearse, so you're just going to have to show up and know it cold and all that kind of stuff. And I did, and it was really great because that was a band, that was the kind of band that influenced pretty much everybody that ever heard them. You know, and when we say everybody that ever heard them, we're talking about the Ramones, we're talking about the Clash, we're talking about, you know, basically, you know, the what became known as the movement of punk rock. You know, the New York Dolls are sort of credited with being at the forefront of that genre development in rock music. David,
they really were ahead of their time. I mean, it was kind of glam rock. Like the look was glam.
The look was very glam, you know, and I think it's Johnny Ramone maybe talks, or maybe it's Dee Dee in the Ramones documentary, the End of the Century documentary. They talk about that, like, you know, like we'd be coming home, you know, after school, tough public high school in Queens, and we'd put on our fur coats and we'd put on some makeup and some, you know, borrow your sister's shoes or whatever, and go down, you know, town to hear the New York Dolls play, to watch the New York Dolls play. And the magic of it was that it was not so technically proficient that you felt like what was being done on stage was impossible. It felt like I could do that. Yeah. And that was so powerful. And then the way that they looked, you know, they were all so just like handsome, but just like done up in these just amazing ways. And David was kind of one of the first guys to really like lean into, you know, the feminist side of his personality, as a very intentional way to kind of get under the skin of people whose skin probably needed to be gotten under, you know?
So you got the gig.
Yep.
You learned the songs.
Yep.
You got a verse and a chorus out of David at the rehearsal.
Yep.
And then on the plane the next day. Where did you play?
We flew to we flew to Buenos Aires, and the first show was in Rosario, Argentina. We got off the plane, and we were on the bus to the hotel in Buenos Aires, and David pulled out a cigarette pack out of his pocket. He looks inside him and he goes, "I thought this was cigarettes. The whole thing is full of joints." So he had flown
hilarious
from JFK to South America with an entire cigarette box full of joints. Fantastic.
Handy.
And we got to Rosario and played the show. Went really well. We did a few more shows on that South American tour with the B-52s, which was really fun.
Fantastic.
And it was just high adventure. After that, I got hired by Sylvain to play in some of his bands. And also Sammy Yaffa had a really cool band in New York called Madwana that he asked me to come try out for as well. And yeah, it was a great, musical family to walk into, because you got the Dolls, you got David, you got Syl, but you had Brian Delaney, who was this amazing drummer. Sammy Yaffa, had originally been in Hanoi Rocks and just had every amazing rock and roll story you'd ever want to hear. And then there were the sort of adjacent, Hubert Sumlin was a part of that family, and Brian Coonan was a part of that family, and all of these, just really great New York musicians. And so, yeah, it was kind of like, stepping into a whole new, group of friends that, kind of elevated my, the bar for me,
What year would this have been?
2009.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever see the documentary New York Doll?
Yes. Yeah, about Arthur.
Arthur.
Yeah.
Maybe
fantastic.
my favorite music doc of all time.
It's really great. And it is such a beautiful picture of Arthur. Here's this guy working in the library that used to be in the New York Doll at the Mormon Library.
Genealogy Library.
Exactly.
And he's like, all he wants to do is get the dolls back together, and he's got his base in Hawk.
Yep.
It lives in at the pawn stop, and he makes sure, and before the ticket runs out, and so they'll put it on the market, he goes and pays the bill again year after year to keep it in Hawk, just keeping the dream alive,
just in case.
God, it's such a, and the turn. I think everybody should watch this music documentary if you can find it. New York Doll. The turn it takes at the end of the movie is so. To me, if it had been a scripted film, I'd have been like, okay,
yeah,
come on, guys.
I know,
but it's just like, wow, just so beautiful, such a beautiful story. And
it really is
a beautiful rock and roll story, and that's how I knew of the New York Dolls, but the kind of the review part of that movie, I was like how I got more familiar with the history of the band. Maybe you could play a song here in the studio if you felt like it.
Absolutely.
What would you like to play, and could you set it up for us?
Yeah. This song that I'm going to do is off of my first album, In the Blazes, which we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of this year, and we reissued the record and we did the first leg of the tour earlier this fall. It went really well, and we're doing the second leg in January. Out west, and this song was kind of one of the key songs that I wrote for this record, which I made not long after I moved to East Nashville. I'd been living in Brooklyn for 10 years. I had sort of watched those neighborhoods change as it filled up with people that looked like me. And I watched also that people who'd been living there for a long time, had to leave because they couldn't afford the real estate anymore, and the neighborhoods that they knew, changed into something different. And so I saw the duality of that dynamic. And when I moved to East Nashville, same kind of thing. And I felt very conflicted about that. And that's kind of reflected in this song, which is called East Nashville Song About a Train. In a very sweet, just beautiful, hilarious gift from life. About 2 weeks after I finished this song, there was an article I think it was the Nashville Scene, about a group of folks who had recently moved to East Nashville, who had tried to get a petition going to get rid of the trains that come through East Nashville because they felt like they were really noisy. And it was a whole thing. There was like some town halls and stuff. Yeah. Well, somebody at the clerk's office or something made a terrible mistake when they were filing the paperwork. And these people did not end up banning trains from East Nashville. They ended up banning the band Train. which I know sounds
that true?
It is. It really. It was a. I know, man. He's a great guy.
Great guy. Very nice guy and fantastic singer. Yeah, let's be honest.
And some great songs those guys have. That first record in particular, I really loved. But all their stuff is great. And
we'll never know here in Nashville.
But we'll never get to know because of those idiots. But that was just the best. I love when stuff like that happens.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Well, the kids in this town don't have a clue. They're as white as the collar that they've painted blue. Get it together or pack it in. Everything is hanging on a clothing peg. Think when it pours, it only rains. Move out to East Nashville and write a song about a train. Old Hank came from a place so dark. You'd have to burn the whole thing just to see a spark. Well, you could see why he died so fast. Just think about the thing you would change about your past. Don't worry, we've got booze and pills for pain. Move out to East Nashville and write a song about a train. Well, you can't turn away from your own 2 feet or give away what's not yours to keep. I cry to you when I feel wrong. I need it like a teenager needs a song. Well, the money's all gone, but the attitude's stuck. And the major label cuts are all about trucks. Well, if this ain't country, and brother, it's not, and it's almost as bad as what they're calling punk rock. Some singers make the sweetest words profane. Move out to East Nashville and write a song about a train. We've got every kind of bands and crack cocaine. Move out to East Nashville and write a song about a train.
Man, that was fantastic. And thank you for letting my little girl Zuzu sit in here and watch.
Yeah, she's really cool.
She's
man.
getting her education in early. That song, I don't know if it's, I mean, it had a little bit of this element to it in a couple of capacities. One was, dude, I mean, you're a motherfucker with a zinger of a line, man. It's like, that's got line after line after line attribute to it. And there's humor in it. There's a little tongue in cheek there. Reminds me of Todd Snyder. And then maybe it's just, there's a verse about, Hank and Pills.
Yeah.
And the playing a train song in East Nashville. It's like 2 Todd Snyder songs on East Nashville skyline.
I never thought of that, but it's true. That's very true.
It makes me want to ask, like, I'm a huge Todd fan. In fact, this is why probably that record is why I moved to Nashville.
Sure.
A story I've told another time. But having been a guy that's lived in so many places, you were born in Delaware. Mm-hmm. I always think of Wayne's World.
Yes.
On vacation. Oh, we're in Delaware.
Totally nailed it.
Out in California, and then Ohio, and then up to New York, and then finally here. What was it about here that made you stick around a second?
Yeah. Well, what I've always just kind of done what I do. Mm-hmm. And I've never been a guy who I'm always listening to everything that's coming out. But like when I was living in Brooklyn, New York, like 2004 basically to like end of 2013, I was hearing a lot of cool records coming out. MGMT was popping off then, and a lot of that. But I loved, I loved Todd, and I loved John Prine, and I loved, Pity, and I loved, those. Warren Zevon, Randy Newman, whom I would sort of call very literate songwriters. Mm-hmm. Jason certainly, was one of my new obsessions at that time, and Justin Townes Earl as well. But doing that in Brooklyn at that time was not very cool to be doing. In fact, I remember I had a band called the Madison Square Gardeners, and our goal was to be a combination of both Heartbreakers. We wanted to be a combination of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and Johnny Thunder's Heartbreakers. So just sort of like some sort of chaotic power pop mess.
Yeah,
I guess was the goal, and we pulled it off.
Nailed it.
But this guy from Atlantic Records came to see us one time, and he told the person who invited us out afterwards. He goes, these guys are good. He goes, what they're doing though, he was like, it's so unhip that it's almost coming all the way back around to being hip again. I've always treasured that observation about what I was doing. But in that way, I was very much an outlier in that scene. Even though I was working in that scene, I was playing, for oftentimes in bands that were on ATO records like Everest or Alberta Cross, groups like that. And I knew all those people, and they were always supportive of what I was doing in my own music and stuff. But there was just this very distinct feeling of like, not fitting in with that musical scene, you know. And I would and I was playing guitar sometimes for an artist in those days who would open for Todd, and so I got to know Todd pretty well on some of those tours, and I would sometimes sort of explain this to him as it's like, man, it's just I know that John Prine is cool, but like, I'm getting up at Rockwood Music Hall or whatever and singing these old John Prine tunes, and people are kind of looking at me like I have a square head or something, and Todd was just like, well, you gotta come down here, because this scene certainly has, cool indie rock people, Dave Berman or somebody like that, and so you're not losing any of that. Mm-hmm. But you also, get to live in this place where like, not only do they think John Prine is cool, he's like the patron saint of artists here, like, you'll feel very at home basically. And it took me, 4 or 5 years to kind of work up the guts to
What was the reticence? I mean, you obviously had a good thing going on in the biggest city in the world.
That was it. Yeah. I really wanted, more than anything, I wanted to be an artist. but I also was not ignorant enough to recognize that I was extraordinarily fortunate to be a guy who had these skill sets, who would get calls to play in the type of bands that I was getting to play in, you know, who were performing on Letterman and playing at Bonnaroo and doing all of these sort of more high profile gigs. I recognized that being a guy even who's getting called to, you know, play guitar just as a professional side musician was a very fortunate situation to be in. And I didn't want to, I was afraid that if I went somewhere else, you know, it's like, I've been here for
classic.
however, the classic thing. It's like, you know, nobody knows who I am here.
So what changed? What was the initial impetus that got you in the van?
When I decided to, I have a very dear friend named Brett Bass. Brett Bass is an amazing person. He's from Texas. He's a bass player. He can play anything under the sun and has such a spirit about what he does that's just really magical. So I have a deep respect for him as a musician. And I remember he and I were playing with the singer of the Spin Doctors, Chris Barron. And we had gotten to the gig a little early that day, and so we were just kind of sitting at the bar, just kind of catching up a little bit. And I had made a solo record that he had played on, but I had not released it. Like, we had done it over, you know, a year ago or something like that. And he was kind of asking, like, you know, when are you going to release that, and what's your plan for it, and like all that kind of stuff. And I didn't really have one. And he, in a very mature adult sort of way, kind of was like, you know, man, if you know, all due respect, like, if you just sit around talking about this stuff, making records that never come out, like, you're kind of bullshit. You realize that, you know?
Tough love. Yeah.
And I was like, man, he's kind of right. You know, like, I really haven't, I've allowed my fear to prevent me from trying harder at this, because it is throwing myself into the unknown, and there's no guarantee, and it's like playing the lottery, you know. Moving to Nashville somehow felt like a opportunity to do that, mainly because the cost of living was so substantially less at that time than the cost of living in New York was, that I felt like I could sort of maintain some amount of the gigs that I was playing on guitar, but that money would go so much further here that I would have more time during the week to really focus on getting myself out there as an artist and creating the kind of opportunities that would actually make a difference in my career. And what that ultimately looked like for me really was identifying other people who were doing it, whom I really respected, and who I thought were really great, and work together with them to collaborate on a tour where I had a few markets that I could draw a few people in, and they had a few markets that they could draw a few people in, and let's put that together.
What were some of those early collabs?
John Moreland.
Oh yeah.
Was a big one.
Fantastic.
Caleb Cottle was another one. Mm-hmm. Lily Hyatt was a great one. And it was, I think back on those times with such fondness, because it really was just people who really deeply cared about something, who had cared enough about it to have built a little something for themselves, and found ways to share that with each other. Mm-hmm. and everybody. That was a true example of, you know, rising tides lifts all boats. That was a moment in my life where that really, I got to have that experience and feel what that feels like, which is really amazing.
It's also a reversal of some of maybe an early intuition that a competitive artist who wants to make a name for him or herself might have, which is to like, okay, I've got to stand out. I got to be the one.
Yeah.
This is a limited opportunity situation and it's got to be me.
Right.
And, whereas the truth, I've learned this over and over again, the hard way, more times than not, to focus a little bit more on other people and help them get to where they're going. Maybe putting it this way, it's more of an attitude of like, can I help you with what I have to offer? Can I be helpful?
Yes.
And to the extent that you can be helpful, and then usually like to each other, then it's like everybody wins, and then the music wins, and then more people discover this music that we all love so much. So I feel like that's maybe an example of that. That is a nice unexpected non sequitur. It's a sequitur.
It's a sequitur
to the post we were talking about that you just made before the mics came on about one of your gas station moments. I feel like that could be a great series for you. That's a great opportunity. It's like a 3-minute reel. You got while the gas is pumping, some thoughts. But to really crudely paraphrase it, it was just like thinking about, as an artist, how can I be helpful? Yeah. And that is not something that occurs to, I think, a young artist at the beginning. They don't think of themselves as offering something to help others. They think of, like, I don't know, how can I get famous or get attention or whatever.
Yeah.
So how do you think of that? How is Aaron Lee Tasjan helpful in 2025?
Yeah.
However you'd like to feel that.
I think in a lot of ways, what I have learned is really helpful is when you see someone doing what they love, and you see them doing that in a way that feels very restorative and joyful. I think people tend to react in a few ways, all positive. One way is like, oh, I want that for myself, Another way is, I feel like that is possible for me to do, and that really, to me, just means, writing songs every day, playing guitar every day, thinking about art every day, putting that up on social media and allowing people to see you doing it. Just the act of doing it itself is really helpful for other people to see. So there's that sort of just like making myself visible, being present, showing up every day for this thing that I believe in and want to share with others.
Leading by example could be a way of putting it.
I suppose
perhaps.
so. Yeah, actually, yeah.
You don't have to say it that way, but I'll say it that way.
I hear what you're. Yeah, it's a way to inspire, I guess.
Absolutely.
Which is always going to be great. Beyond that, I think the way, that I've been able to help myself, is by some of the other stuff that I was talking about in that video of just simplifying things, scaling things back, like getting back to, the essence of why, and the meaning of the work and how the work is helpful, whether that is because someone heard a song of yours that they really needed to hear at a certain time and it really helped them through something, or is because someone is going through a particularly challenging few days and your concert in town that night is a place for them to come and not have to feel all that for a few minutes, or whether, you're at the merge table and this is happening more and more now, I think, because I'm getting older. My fans are getting older too. They're coming with their kid who plays music, who maybe doesn't have a chance to meet Harry Styles or whatever, but you in that moment are a professional doing this for a living, and that shows them that there is a life and a possibility for you within this that means that you don't even have to be Harry Styles if for whatever reason
it's so huge.
you don't feel that that's you, and you feel like I just want to have a cooler, smaller thing. Like, is that even a thing? And it's like, it is, there's all of these different ways just by doing the work of it that you're helping. But I think also, like, getting back to a little bit of what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, like intention, is another one, and thinking, very intentionally about like who I am, what my voice is, where it might exist in the landscape of the moment that it will have an impact. And that doesn't mean big necessarily, that just means intentional. There might be, a group of folks, at a shelter or something somewhere that like, I can go sing for them or not even. I can go over there and serve them meals, or whatever it is. Like, the fact that I am an artist who has the luxury of time, means that like I have time to be helpful in a number of different capacities, even outside of music. So it's really being intentional with like the thought, and the time that you have, and seeing the wide array of possibilities that exist for you to pitch in.
Yeah. Beautifully put. And, I feel like that, however it manifests itself, it is just sort of the attitude that sort of steers everything. To have an attitude of service is like so different than like, you owe me.
Sure.
I'm fucking great. When are you going to figure it out?
Yeah. I mean, there is, I understand artists. I don't begrudge anyone that has the mentality of like, look, I'm the artist. I've thought about all this stuff. I've worked it out this way. If anybody doesn't want to be here, they're welcome to leave. I don't disagree with that, in principle. I've just found for myself that where I really connect with me, and where the perception that I have of myself and who I really am like actually lines up is when I am treating music and my work as an artist more like a public service.
Mm-hmm. One last question. Okay, you're really good at a lot of different things. One of the reasons why I've wanted to have you on the podcast for so long is that the artists that I kind of am drawn to year after year, and we've been talking about them before the mics, whether it's, great songcrafters, pianists like Randy Newman or Adam Levy or you or like Daryl Scott comes to mind, a singer-songwriter, amazing guitar player, is that you're a bit of a triple threat, my man. The songs are fantastic. You sing them with such personality and genuineness of spirit, which is just eternally attractive. But you're just like a great musician as well. Okay, that's the praise. And then the question is, of the things that you do, what do you do best? And what of the things that you do are you worst at that you still find yourself drawn to pursue and get better at?
My thing that I am best at is seeing something through all the way to the end to make it the best that it can be. I think I'm like a Virgo person, so I'm like very detail oriented. And I will just catch like the tiniest little things sometimes that like, I mean, it can really just be a change of a word even or something like that. That will, just kind of like push something like that much further along.
Take it from 97 to 99%.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that happens in music that really results in something like that feels powerful sometimes is really those very small little things like that.
Like dropping the last line of the chorus and up all night.
Something
maybe.
that most people might not even notice or think about, So, that's where I feel like I'm really at my strength, whether that's doing that for myself or, an artist that I'm, lucky to be producing or co-writing with or something. That's what I feel like I bring to the table. That's my best. The thing that I'm worst at doing is probably just like mixing and engineering in Pro Tools. But I am endlessly fascinated by the process. I've figured out how to do it well on other DAWs, but that one it's just more like key commandy and like less intuitive. I'm very kind of caveman, when it comes to my process of like recording stuff. But it is something that endlessly fascinates me, and learning how to listen to things in a way and see all the possibilities of like how to affect the sound of them in front of me is it's just something I really love. When I just finished a new record, and the way that the record got recorded, we were kind of going for these darker tonalities, and it was sort of mixed very similarly. And then when it got to mastering, the mastering engineer was like, took a pass at it in that way and sent it, and it was like, man, this is really great, and then we all took a few more days, and both the mix engineer and the mastering engineer kind of came back and were like, actually, we feel like if we just did some like high band shelving like here and here, it might just like kind of open it up a little bit more in a way that would be really cool. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And as soon as I heard that version of it, I was like, oh man, this is like so amazing. Like all of these things are now like jumping out of these mixes, and like and they're more dynamic and just colorful. All of a sudden, just by making these few last very final stage adjustments on what we've done, and it's not taking any of the character away of what we've done, but it is revealing more of what's there, and so that feels right to me. And it was just, that was the first time that I had ever really contemplated, the way that a record can really, you can hear what's there and know how to bring even more of it out at that very last stage. Mastering is so mysterious, I feel like. Truly. Anyway, it's always kind of hard to know. Like, it just sounds a little louder, and that's good, I guess.
That's where I'm at with it. Yeah.
but the way that it can really color things, it's just it just kind of blew my mind. Yeah. So it's just a great reminder too. Of it's like, man, there's like I'll probably learn 10 things on the way home if I'm like paying attention.
My dude, thank you so much for this this time. I've learned a lot, and to have somebody whose music inspires you so much, it's wonderful to talk to them in real life and have a similar kind of inspired feeling. So,
well, likewise, buddy.
I wish you the best, man, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you.
The Morse Code Podcast is produced by Korby Lenker and Jared Hammond in East Nashville, Tennessee. Our executive producer is Randa Newman. You can find full videos for this and all previous episodes at morsecodepodcast.com.